In the heart of a bustling city lived Amanda, a wealthy businesswoman known for her sharp wit and stunning fashion sense. Amanda thrived in the spotlight and loved nothing more than a good challenge. Among her group of high society friends, she was famous not only for her wealth, but also for her daring nature. One evening, during a lavish party at her luxurious penthouse, Amanda's friends joked about how she could get anyone to fall in love with her. The conversation was light and filled with laughter until one friend, with a mischievous glint in his eye, threw a daring bet her way. He bet Amanda that she couldn't persuade a man of their choosing to marry her within 6 months. The twist: the man would be someone who seemed completely mismatched to her usual taste in partners. Intrigued and always ready for a challenge, Amanda accepted the bet without a second thought. The next day, her friends introduced her to Jonathan, a kind-hearted man with a cheerful smile and a love for comic books and video games. Unlike the fit, sharply dressed men Amanda was used to dating, Jonathan was quite overweight and preferred comfort over style in his clothing choices. At first, Amanda saw this as nothing more than a game. She approached Jonathan with her usual charm and confidence. They started spending time together, with Amanda orchestrating perfect dates that she thought would impress Jonathan. From exclusive restaurant reservations to private art gallery viewings, each encounter was meticulously planned to showcase the glamorous life she led. However, as the weeks passed, Amanda began to see past the surface. Jonathan's laughter was genuine, his insights were thoughtful, and his kindness was unlike anything she had experienced before. He treated everyone around him with such respect and care, regardless of who they were. It was a stark contrast to the often superficial interactions in her social circles. Amanda found herself enjoying Jonathan's company for who he was, not just as part of her bet. She started to appreciate their simple nights in, eating takeout and watching old movies, more than her usual high society events. Jonathan's presence brought a sense of peace and happiness that was new to her. As Amanda's feelings deepened, she faced a dilemma. The bet that had started as a fun challenge was turning into a journey of self-discovery. She realized that her initial intentions might lead to hurting someone she was growing to care for deeply. This thought weighed heavily on her, and she found herself at a crossroads, questioning not only the bet but also her previous values and choices in life. The end of Part 1 sees Amanda reflecting on her actions and the unexpected connection she's formed with Jonathan. She knows a decision looms on the horizon, one that might change both their lives forever. Amanda's journey with Jonathan took an unexpected turn as they started to spend more time together. Initially, it was all part of her plan to win the bet by marrying a man her friends thought was entirely unsuitable for her. But as days turned into weeks, Amanda found herself genuinely enjoying Jonathan's company. His laughter was contagious, his stories about comic book heroes were surprisingly captivating, and his simple joy in the small pleasures of life began to warm her heart. One chilly evening, as they walked through the park wrapped up in cozy scarves, Jonathan stopped to buy them hot chocolates from a small vendor. As they sat on a bench, watching children play near a frozen pond, Jonathan shared stories from his childhood. He spoke of his dreams, his fears, and his simple philosophy of finding happiness in every moment. Amanda listened, touched by his openness and honesty. She realized that she was seeing a side of life that was completely new to her, a contrast to the competitive, high-stakes world she was used to. With each passing day, the reality of the bet started to bother Amanda more and more. What began as a game was turning into something real and meaningful. She noticed the little things Jonathan would do for her, like bringing her favorite snacks without her asking or remembering to record a TV show he knew she didn't want to miss. It was in these small gestures that Amanda saw the depth of Jonathan's kindness and generosity. Their relationship continued to grow, and Amanda began to introduce Jonathan to her friends, the very ones who had bet against him. They were surprised to see how well he fit into their gatherings, charming everyone with his humor and humility. But at one such event, as Amanda watched Jonathan laughing with her friends, the weight of her deceit began to press down on her. She was struck by the realization that what she was doing wasn't fair to him. He was here under false pretenses, unaware of the bet that brought them together. That night, as they walked back to her apartment, Amanda felt a turmoil inside her. She knew she had to make a choice. The fun and excitement of the bet had faded, leaving behind a growing affection and respect for Jonathan that she could no longer ignore. She wondered if confessing about the bet would end their relationship, or if there was a chance Jonathan might understand and forgive her. As they reached her door, Jonathan turned to her with a smile that had become dear to her over their time together. He thanked her for a wonderful evening, his eyes shining with sincerity. Amanda felt a pang in her heart, knowing she had to tell him the truth. The thought of hurting him was unbearable. For a real future together, Amanda invited Jonathan inside for a cup of tea, her mind racing with how to reveal the truth. As they sat on her plush sofa, surrounded by the soft glow of dimmed lights, Amanda's heart pounded in her chest. The warmth from the tea did little to calm her nerves. Jonathan, on the other hand, seemed relaxed, laughing softly as he recounted a funny incident from work. Amanda marveled at his ability to find humor in the simplest things, a quality that had endeared him to her more than she had anticipated. Taking a deep breath, Amanda set her cup down, her hands trembling slightly. "Jonathan, there's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice faltering. Jonathan's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. He set his cup aside and turned to face her fully, sensing the seriousness of the moment. Amanda swallowed hard, her eyes meeting his. "When we first met, it wasn't by chance. I was challenged by my friends to marry someone who they thought wasn't my type." She paused, searching his face for signs of his reaction. "It was a bet, Jonathan. I took it because I thought it was just another fun game." But her voice cracked. "I never expected to genuinely care for you as I do now." Jonathan sat back, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched between them, heavy and tense. Amanda's heart sank as she watched him process her words, fearing that she had just destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to her. Finally, Jonathan spoke, his voice steady but soft. "I appreciate your honesty, Amanda. It hurts, though, knowing our relationship started as a bet." He looked away, his jaw clenched. Amanda reached out, her hand hovering over his, desperate to connect with him, to explain further, to make him see how much she truly cared. "I understand if you want to leave, and I won't blame you," Amanda continued, her voice a whisper. "But I want you to know, Jonathan, that what I feel for you now is real. You've shown me a different side of life, a better one, and I'm so sorry for how this all started." Jonathan was quiet for a long time, leaving Amanda to grapple with the fear of losing him. But then he turned back to face her, his eyes searching hers. "I need some time to think about all this," he said finally, his voice calm but distant. Amanda nodded, feeling a mix of relief and dread. "Of course, take all the time you need," she replied, trying to mask her anxiety. Jonathan stood, hesitated, and then leaned down to give her a brief, gentle hug. "Thank you for telling me the truth, Amanda. That means a lot," he said softly before he left, leaving Amanda alone with her thoughts, hoping for a chance to mend what had started under false pretenses. The night grew deeper as Amanda sat there, contemplating the possible outcomes of her confession, hoping that the foundation they had built could withstand the storm she had brought upon them. Amanda sat alone in her apartment, the silence pressing down on her. She replayed the moment over and over in her head, wondering if she had just lost Jonathan forever. She had expected anger, maybe even shouting, but the way he had calmly asked for time hurt even more. It meant he was truly disappointed, truly hurt. And that was worse than any yelling. The days passed slowly. Amanda kept checking her phone, hoping for a message from Jonathan. She wanted to reach out, to ask how he was, but she knew she had to give him space. She had hurt him, and now all she could do was wait. Her friends, the very ones who had dared her into this bet, still found the whole thing amusing. When she mentioned that she had told Jonathan the truth, they laughed. So what? He'll get over it. Or just find someone else, one of them said with a shrug. Amanda felt a sudden wave of anger. Was this what she had been like before? So careless about other people's feelings. Looking around at her so-called friends, she realized something. She didn't belong in this shallow world anymore. Jonathan had shown her something different. Something real. Determined not to sit around feeling sorry for herself, Amanda decided to take action. If she really wanted to prove to Jonathan that she cared, she needed to do more than just apologize. She needed to show him. She started by visiting the places he loved. The small comic book store where he spent his weekends, the cafe where he always ordered his favorite chocolate milkshake, the animal shelter where he volunteered every Sunday. She learned things about him that she had never bothered to ask before. And the more she learned, the more she respected him. One day, while walking past a bakery, she remembered something Jonathan had told her. He loved homemade pastries because they reminded him of his grandmother. Amanda had never baked anything in her life, but she went straight to a store, bought everything she needed, and spent the next few hours making a complete mess in her kitchen. The cookies came out looking terrible, but she smiled. It wasn't about perfection. It was about effort. Finally, after nearly a week of silence, Amanda gathered her courage and sent Jonathan a message. Amanda, hey, I know you needed time, and I respect that. But I just wanted to say that I miss you. Can we talk? She stared at her phone, heart pounding. A few minutes passed, then her screen lit up with a reply. Jonathan, come to the park. The bench where we had hot chocolate. I'll be there in an hour. Amanda grabbed her coat and rushed out the door, her heart racing. She didn't know what would happen, but she knew one thing for sure. She was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. Amanda arrived at the park earlier than she expected, her heart pounding in her chest. The cold air bit at her skin, but she hardly noticed. Her thoughts were too focused on what she would say to Jonathan. She had spent the past week thinking about him, missing him, and realizing just how much he had changed her without even trying. Now she had a chance to make things right, and she wouldn't waste it. She spotted him before he saw her. Jonathan was sitting on their usual bench, hands in his pockets, gazing at the frozen pond. He looked deep in thought, and Amanda felt a pang of guilt. She had hurt him, and she didn't know if he would ever forgive her. Taking a deep breath, she walked over and sat beside him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't entirely uncomfortable. Amanda glanced at him, searching for any sign of anger or resentment, but his expression was unreadable. I wasn't sure if you would come, she finally said, her voice softer than usual. Jonathan sighed and looked at her. I wasn't sure if I should, he admitted, but I figured after everything, I owed you at least one conversation. Amanda swallowed, knowing this was her only chance. Jonathan, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice filled with emotion. I know I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I never should have agreed to that stupid bet. I was selfish, and I thought it was just a game. But then I met you, and everything changed. Jonathan didn't respond right away. He simply looked at her, his eyes searching hers as if trying to see if she was telling the truth. I never meant to fall for you, she continued, her hands gripping the fabric of her coat. But I did, and it wasn't because of the bet, or because I had to. It was because of who you are. You're kind, thoughtful, funny. And you made me see the world in a way I never had before. Jonathan sighed, his breath visible in the cold air. Amanda, I won't lie. When you told me the truth, it hurt. A lot. I felt like I was just some joke to you. No, Amanda said quickly, shaking her head. You were never a joke to me. Not even for a second. Jonathan was quiet for a moment before asking, then why did it take you so long to tell me? Amanda hesitated, guilt washing over her again. Because I was scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of facing what I had done. But I don't want to be that kind of person anymore. You made me want to be better. Jonathan sighed again, rubbing his hands together for warmth. "You know, Amanda, trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight." "I know," she whispered. "But if you let me, I want to prove to you that I mean every word." Jonathan looked at her, his expression softening just slightly. "We'll see," he said finally. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either, and for now, Amanda would take it. Amanda held on to Jonathan's words, feeling a small sense of hope. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. That meant there was still a chance to prove to him that she was sincere, a chance to fix what she had broken. She wasn't going to let this moment slip away. For the next few days, Amanda made an effort to show Jonathan that she was serious about changing. She didn't just send him long messages apologizing. She showed up where it mattered. She joined him at the animal shelter where he volunteered, even though she had never once considered working with animals before. At first, she didn't know what she was doing, but she watched Jonathan closely, following his lead, learning how to care for the stray cats and dogs. Jonathan noticed. He didn't say much, but every time she looked up, she caught him glancing at her, as if trying to figure out if this was just another act. One day, Amanda invited Jonathan to a small cafe, not the fancy, high-end places she was used to, but a quiet little corner shop he had once mentioned liking. She was nervous as she waited for him, unsure if he would even come, but he did. They sat across from each other, sipping coffee in silence at first. It wasn't awkward, just different. "You don't have to do all this, you know," Jonathan finally said, stirring his drink. "You don't have to try so hard." "I want to," Amanda replied immediately. "Not because I have to, but because I care. And because I regret everything I did." Jonathan sighed, setting his cup down. "You know what the worst part was?" he said quietly. "I really believe that what we had was real, that I mattered to you." Amanda's heart clenched. "You do matter to me," she said, leaning forward. "I know I messed up, but these past few weeks, Jonathan, you've shown me what it means to actually care about someone, and not in the way my so-called friends pretend to. You're real, you're honest, and I admire that more than anything." Jonathan studied her for a long time. "If you could go back," he asked, "would you still take that bet?" Amanda thought about it. The old her probably would have said yes, but she wasn't that person anymore. She shook her head. "No. If I could go back, I'd want to meet you the right way. No bets. No games." Jonathan looked down at his hands, thinking. Then, after a long pause, he let out a soft chuckle. "I still don't know if I can trust you completely," he admitted. Amanda smiled sadly. "I understand. But," he continued, meeting her gaze, "I'm willing to see where this goes." Amanda's heart swelled with relief. He wasn't shutting her out. He was giving her a chance. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Amanda couldn't stop smiling after that conversation. Jonathan had given her a chance. It wasn't full trust yet, but it was something. And that was all she needed. She was ready to prove to him that she was no longer the person who had taken that foolish bet. Over the next few weeks, they spent more time together. It wasn't like before, when Amanda had planned everything to impress him. This time, things were natural, simple. They took walks in the park, sat in cozy cafes, and watched old movies at Jonathan's apartment. Amanda found herself enjoying these small moments more than any of the luxurious events she used to attend. For the first time in her life, she wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. She was just being herself. One evening, as they sat on a park bench, Amanda turned to Jonathan with a nervous smile. "I never told you, but I actually tried baking," she admitted. Jonathan's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You? Baking?" She laughed. "I know, shocking, right? It was a disaster. The cookies looked like rocks." Jonathan chuckled. "You should have called me. I would have helped." Amanda hesitated, then looked at him seriously. "I wanted to do it myself, Because I wanted to understand you better. I've been so focused on my own world for so long that I never stopped to appreciate the things that make other people happy. But you opened my eyes to that." Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. It wasn't his usual playful smile, but something softer, something that made Amanda's heart flutter. "You really have changed, haven't you?" he asked. Amanda nodded. "I hope so. I don't want to be the person I was before." Jonathan sighed, leaning back. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just another rich person looking for attention. But now I see someone who actually cares, someone who's willing to grow." Amanda felt warmth spread through her chest. Those words meant everything to her. "Does that mean you forgive me?" she asked carefully. Jonathan smiled, but it was thoughtful. "Forgiveness isn't something that happens in a single moment. But I can say this, I don't hold anger against you anymore. And I do believe that what we have now is real." Amanda felt tears prick at her eyes. She had been hoping for this moment, but hearing it made her realize just how much it truly meant. She reached for Jonathan's hand and squeezed it gently. "That's more than I could have asked for." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars above. Amanda no longer cared about what her old friends thought, or about winning any silly bets. The only thing that mattered was the person sitting beside her. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she had won something truly valuable. Jonathan's trust, and maybe even his heart. As the weeks passed, Amanda and Jonathan grew even closer. Their time together no longer felt like an effort to fix the past. It was simply natural. They laughed more, shared deeper conversations, and enjoyed life in a way Amanda had never imagined before. The high society parties and expensive gatherings no longer interested her. What mattered now was the warmth she felt whenever she was with Jonathan. One afternoon, Amanda invited Jonathan to her home for dinner. This time, she didn't hire a private chef or plan an extravagant meal. Instead, she spent hours in the kitchen herself, determined to cook something he would enjoy. It wasn't perfect, but when Jonathan took his first bite, he smiled. "This is actually good," he teased, making Amanda laugh. She watched as he enjoyed the meal, feeling a sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with money or status. It was a simple moment, yet it felt more meaningful than anything she had ever experienced. She realized she had changed, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. After dinner, they sat on the balcony, enjoying the evening breeze. Amanda hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Jonathan, there's something I want to say." He turned to her, waiting patiently. "I know it's taken time, but I want you to know that I love you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Not because I feel guilty, and not because I want to prove something. I love you because you showed me what really matters in life." Jonathan's eyes softened, and for a moment, he didn't say anything. Amanda's heart pounded, afraid of what he might say. Then he reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "I love you too, Amanda," he said, smiling. "And I believe you." A wave of relief washed over her, and she felt tears of happiness in her eyes. This was real. This was what she had been searching for all along. Not approval from her so-called friends, not a bet to win, but something honest and true. Jonathan chuckled. "I guess the bet brought us together in a strange way, huh?" Amanda shook her head, smiling. "Maybe. But we made it real. That's what matters." From that moment on, their relationship was no longer tied to the past. It was about the future, a future built on trust, love, and the kind of happiness that couldn't be measured by wealth or status. Amanda had started this journey thinking she was playing a game. But in the end, she had won something far greater, Jonathan's heart, and a love that was real.